Welcome to Europe Art on Monte Carlo Digital Television. This program is your window to the best in European art and culture. I'm your host, Geoff Harrison in Amsterdam. In this episode, we remember the artistic genius of David Lynch, we visit Waddesdon Manor in the UK, and remember the German artist Albrecht Dürer. Over the course of more than 50 years, David Lynch nurtured a wide practice stemming from his early work as a painter that spawned many other mediums including drawing, photography, printmaking, sculpture, music and film. Though he was an artist first and foremost, Lynch was widely known as the maker of avant-garde and intensely inventive films such as Eraserhead, 1977, The Elephant Man, 1980, Blue Velvet, 1986, Lost Highway, 1997, Mulholland Drive, 2001, as well as the television series Twin Peaks from 1990-1991 and Twin Peaks The Return in 2017. He received 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Director and 1 for Best Adapted Screenplay, and in 2020 he was awarded an honorary Oscar for Lifetime Achievement.
Hello, my name is David Lynch. The art life is a great life. It's coffee and cigarettes, maybe some red wine. It's catching ideas and translating them to one medium or another. In the world of painting, it's getting deep into that world and just getting lost in there, and with paint and different things. And it's just a dream to get in there and find things that you love. It's always an experiment, and it just has to be a certain way, but getting there sometimes it's always thrilling. There's so much happiness in it, but it doesn't always happen in a smooth way. But it's so great to be in it while you're in it deep. I always loved to paint and draw. I felt like this was the life of a painter. I didn't ever think that an adult could be a painter. I never really, I guess, thought about it, but I was on the front yard of my girlfriend's house at night, and I met there a kid who was not going to my high school, but I was in the 9th grade, I think, and he was going to a private school. But I was meeting him for the first time in this front yard on the grass. And we started talking, and during the talk, he happened to tell me his father was a painter. And at first I thought maybe a house painter. Then he said, no, a fine art painter. And a bomb went off in my head. Literally, it was like I had signed up for science classes in math stuff in high school, and in a millisecond, way less than a full second, I only wanted to be a painter after I heard that. It gave me permission, and I knew that was it, and that's all I wanted from that second on. And I got him to take me to his father's studio, which at that time was over in Georgetown. I was this was in Virginia, where I was going to high school. So, and Bushnell Keeler was his father, and my friend's name was Toby. So he took me over to Bushnell's place. It was the real deal studio. I fell madly in love, and that was it. Started me, going. It took a while, but I ended up going to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and there were many students who were serious painters. We all became great friends and were workers, and it was beautiful. So Philadelphia, the city, I say is my greatest influence, but also the people that I met there And so it was a really good time to get going on painting. And painting led to cinema. So, you know, they sort of split in a way, but I see them both not exactly the same, but like film is moving paintings, but with sound. And so it kind of made sense to me. But as I've said, I just kind of got green lights in the world of cinema. So one thing led to another. I got an independent filmmakers grant while I was in Philadelphia. I made a film called The Grandmother, and that led to being accepted out here. So, but all the time I was painting. When I moved out here, I didn't have any money really. I was married, had a small daughter, and so painting kind of took a quiet back seat for a while. But I always was drawing. I arrived in LA at night, having driven out in a rental truck with my best friend Jack Fisk and my brother John. And we turned left at Sunset and San Vicente, went down about 3 blocks, parked, and went in and stayed with my friend Alan Splett in his apartment. And when I woke up the next morning and came out, I experienced for the first time Los Angeles light. It knocked me out. I was like in a dream, a heavenly dream. I almost got hit by a car. I wandered into the street looking up at the sun, and it was so beautiful. The reason I came out here is I was accepted to the Center for Advanced Film Studies, which was housed at Greystone Mansion in the best part of Beverly Hills, 55-room mansion, American Film Institute, Center for Advanced Film Studies. And so it was a huge deal. I was 24 when I arrived in LA. I was not part of any art world. I was just loving to paint. I love textures. I love organic phenomenon. I think nature is a great teacher. I don't really like flat paintings. I like things protruding or also going in. I like organic things, and I like both sides of evolution, the sprouting and the growing and the blossoming, but I also like the decay, the other side. It's a love of paint, moving paint around, making things on, you know, in a space. Just incredible. Homes are interesting to me. I don't know exactly why. The shape of a house, you know, like a simple, I like childish things. I guess you could say a sophisticated, childish thing is what I love. And I like this one painting, figure witnessing the orchestration of time. I've always liked that a lot. Just, you know, I wouldn't have enough time to tell you how much I love it. Why? I haven't gotten into sewing. I want to take my drawings and transfer them over to embroidery and see what those things look like. I like the idea of sewing things like this wallet. I didn't make this wallet, but I got to unbutton my pants. This is made out of canvas, and it's got a Velcro snap, but it's all like lined, and I was studying it. It's like even the flap here is beautifully sewn. Production designer Patty Norris made this for me, and it's just great. And so you can make all kinds, and it's got like a belt loop. I can put it on my belt if I wanted to, and it's just very good. Yeah. It's packed with money. I get ideas from the world, from the past experiences. I picture trillions and zillions of ideas that we can catch. And the idea is to catch something that you fall in love with and you want to translate to some medium or another. I practice transcendental meditation as taught by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. You can meditate anywhere, anytime, day or night. Doesn't matter. Noise is no barrier. I always say I had one of my best meditations next to a jackhammer, working, tearing apart a sidewalk. And what's important, people should know and remember the word transcend. Means go beyond. Get to the treasury within each one of us. The treasury is the ocean of pure consciousness, underlying the whole field of relativity, underlying all of matter and mind. And it's a field that's eternal, always been there. Modern science has discovered it, calling it the unified field. Unbounded intelligence, creativity, happiness, love, energy, power, and peace are there for us. Common sense would tell you it'd be very good to experience this field, because every time you truly experience it, when you transcend, you infuse some and you grow in that. And the side effect is negativity starts to lift away automatically, without trying. You can transcend without this technique. People have transcended. I transcended once before I learned this technique by daydreaming. Suddenly I slipped in there. I didn't know what it was. I wanted it again, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't even know what it was. And when people have transcended, between waking and sleeping, you're not asleep yet. You've got your head in the pillow, and you're drifting towards sleep, and in between each state of consciousness that most people experience, waking, sleeping, and dreaming, you can slip into this gap. And I picture it as a round white room with white walls, and there's 3 curtains, red, yellow, and blue, waking, sleeping, and dreaming. But say like you're in the waking, a yellow curtain, and right at the end, before it goes to blue, the sleeping curtain, you can dip in and get that white wall. Otherwise, it's covered. Transcendental meditation you do in the waking state, and you're in the yellow curtain, but it just gets more and more transparent, and then you experience the white wall, the transcendent, and you're rocking. And life gets better and better and better. So I meditate twice a day, and have done it for 46 years. Maharishi's peace greeting groups, people doing transcendental meditation and the TM City program in a group, quadratically more powerful than the same number scattered about. If the group is big enough and on a permanent basis, it can change collective consciousness. Just like it changes an individual, people start feeling better. They start not wanting to blow each other's heads off. They start enjoying life. They start being kind to one another. They feel good in their body. Ideas start flowing. And they get more energy for their work. And all that stress and negativity, it just starts dissipating. And the world becomes a great world, a peaceful world, a happy world. All the secret has always been in this field within. And when peace has come to the earth, planets many times, and it comes this way, just enlivening that field of peace. That's the way it's done. People don't get that. They talk about peace. Talking won't do it. Making a film about it won't do it. It's nice, but you're preaching to the choir usually. The non-peaceful ones don't go see your film. They don't look at that. They don't look at the painting. They don't read the book. You need to change the collective consciousness, and it's pleasant. People who are filled with stress and are doing things that the stress and anger cause them to do, they start not wanting to do that anymore. and they get to be people that you start liking to hang around with, just naturally. It's beautiful. If the people want to know about a great printing studio in the world, Idem Printing Studio in Paris, 49 Rue du Montparnasse, and Patrice Forrest runs it. I was taken there in 2007 by Hervé Chandez, who ran Foundation Cartier, where I had a show that kind of started a whole new phase going for me in the painting world. And he took me over to Idem Printing Studio. I fell in love with this place. It's the real deal French, old, just like you would dream place. And since then, I've done over 250 lithos there. So I just love this place, a place away from home. I love Maggie and Jim and Bill, who run Kane Griffin Corcoran Gallery here in LA, and had shows there with them. So it's a great, big, beautiful world.
Europart on Monte Carlo Digital Television is your window to first-class art and culture in Europe. Waterson Manor is a country house in the village of Waterson in Buckinghamshire, England. Owned by the National Trust and managed by the Rothschild Foundation, it's one of the National Trust's most visited properties with over 463,000 visitors yearly. The Grade 1 listed house was built in a mostly neo-Renaissance style, copying individual features of several French chateaux between 1874 and 1889 for Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild as a weekend residence and for entertaining and to house his collection of arts and antiques.
Waddesdon is a very extraordinary house. Although from the outside it may look like a French Renaissance chateau, and on the inside you'll see many of the rooms are lined with panelling from 18th century French houses. It isn't a house that was built up over hundreds of years, and it in fact was put together in a very short time by one man, Ferdinand de Rothschild, who created it primarily as a stage set really for very lavish entertaining and as a place to show off his collection of art.
Ferdinand had a great love for French 18th century history and for its art. And he collected things that had wonderful provenances that came from historical figures like Marie Antoinette or Louis XV. And in his interiors, he combined these wonderful pieces of decorative art with paintings, and in his case, most often, with English 18th century portraits by Reynolds and Gainsborough. And he instructed his dealer that he was interested in paintings of women, of beautiful women. In this room we have the Duchess of Cumberland by Reynolds, who was a famous beauty and who ran off with one of the sons of George III, which resulted in the Marriage Act that we have today, where the sovereign has to approve the marriage of one of the family.
Ferdinand writes about his collecting, which was the great passion of his life. And his father introduced him to works of art. And he writes very touchingly about unpacking small things, which he found incredibly beautiful. But they were pretty serious, the Rothschild family, in their collecting. I think they had considerable knowledge of French 18th century decorative arts and of Wunderkammer type objects, and indeed, in the case of Ferdinand, of English 18th century portraiture and painters generally.
Everywhere you look at Waddesdon, there's beauty and there's wonder. We're standing here in the smoking room, which contained Baron Ferdinand's Renaissance Museum when he was living in the house. And if you look around the room now, you will find all sorts of treasures from the 16th and 17th century, whether that's tin-glazed earthenware, Maiolica, whether it's rock crystal or carved ivories or Limoges enamel or possibly silver and silver gilt. And the whole combines into the most wonderful treasury, really, And he used to bring his guests here, perhaps in the evening after dinner. So you have to imagine rooms like this seen through veils of cigar smoke. And he would perhaps show off the latest object which he had acquired for the admiration of his guests.
One of the things that marks out Ferdinand's collections is that he really purchased only the best. And this can really be seen in the collection of Sèvres porcelain that he assembled here at Waddesdon. To give you an idea of what Ferdinand was like as a collector, I want to show you this vase in the shape of a ship made by the Sèvres porcelain factory. Now, it's probably the most iconic shape associated with the factory. And whereas most people would begin collecting by buying a cup and saucer, and then as they got more experience, they would move up, if you want, this is the very first thing Ferdinand bought ever as a collector. When he bought this, Ferdinand was only 21 years old.
A collection as fabulous and as fragile as this really wouldn't have survived without some very, very careful care and attention over the years. And for that, we're grateful to Alice, Ferdinand's sister, who inherited the house. And she was something of a dragon and introduced what are still known in the house as Miss Alice's rules, which were the rules and the principles by which the contents of the house were to be preserved and conserved. Alice understood that one of the greatest enemies for a collection like this is light, because light fades textiles, it leaches the colour out of objects, it fades veneers. If you look, for example, at some of the upholstered cushions in the collection, you can see that at the backs and underneath, where the light hasn't penetrated, the colours are incredibly rich and strong, whereas on the light exposed surfaces, they're much more faded.
There is, of course, something of a conflict between a very large number of visitors and preserving a collection. I mean, cultural tourism is a phenomenon of the 21st century, and it has its dangers. So we go to enormous trouble in the months when we're closed to preserve the collection, to keep light off it, to see it's in good condition, so that future generations will be able to enjoy it.
Everything is covered up, the carpets are rolled, all of the porcelain is put away in its original boxes, and this is so that we can do the deep conservation clean that we need to do every winter.
Of all the other Rothschild family houses, this is the one, I think, that is preserved, has its collections intact, adds to those collections, does things which enhance the collections, makes life more fun, if you like, for people who come here. And that's what we're all about.
You are watching Europart on Monte Carlo digital television. Albrecht Dürer, who lived between the 21st of May 1471 and the 6th of April 1528, was a German painter, printmaker and theorist of the German Renaissance. Born in Nuremberg, Dürer established his reputation and influence across Europe in his 20s due to his high-quality woodcut prints. He was also in contact with the major Italian artists of his time, including Raphael, Giovanni Bellini and Leonardo da Vinci, and from 1512 was patronised by Emperor Maximilian I.
This woodcut is the third in Dürer's evocative Apocalypse series, which comprises 15 scenes drawn from the Book of Revelation. It illustrates the four horsemen of the Apocalypse, as described in the Old Testament, with death, famine, war, and plague mounted on their horses, mercilessly trampling over powerless individuals. Hovering above this scene is an angel, set against a dramatic backdrop of clouds and streaming light. His genius in the realm of woodcut artistry lies in his ability to conceptualize intricate and complex images as negative forms, a technique necessitated by the woodcut process, where the non-printing areas are carved away to leave the design in relief. Prior to Durer's intervention, woodcut was considered a somewhat rough technique. Yet, Durer transformed it, drawing blocks with a finesse unrivaled by his predecessors. Much of the actual cutting was executed by skilled craftsmen who meticulously followed Durer's intricate designs. In the biblical accounts, the horsemen are typically identified by the colour of their horses. Limited by the black and white constraints of woodcut art, Durer instead focuses on their weapons: a bow, a sword, a set of scales, and a trident as their defining features. Death is further characterized as a withered, bearded old man on a skeletal horse. The horsemen are depicted side by side in slightly overlapping positions, indicating their sequential arrival as described in the text. Death, the last to arrive, brings along hell, represented by a monstrous creature swallowing a man adorned with a bishop's mitre and crown. The woodcut shows that the apocalypse spares no one, with clergy and nobility suffering alongside the rest of society, their contemporary attire making the scene relatable to 16th century viewers. Imagery of the apocalypse was especially popular as the year 1500 approached, a time many believe would bring the second coming of Christ. This self-portrait, where the artist renders himself as Christ, might be perceived as presumptuous or even sacrilegious. However, it likely represents a combination of deep religious conviction and assured acknowledgement of his own artistic mastery. The piece features Albrecht Dürer, the painter, endowed with divine gifts. Against a bare background, he meets the viewer's gaze directly. His right hand is raised to his chest, fingers splayed in what appears to be a gesture of blessing. Cascading curls reach down to his shoulders, and his signature monogram is displayed prominently to his right. Adjacent to his left is a Latin script which translates to, "I, Albrecht Dürer of Nuremberg, rendered myself in lasting colours at the age of 28. Renaissance portraiture often favoured a three-quarter stance within a naturalistic environment. Dürer's departure to a frontal orientation against a nondescript dark background evokes the holy visages from the Middle Ages, particularly icons of Christ Pantocrator. With the hand gesture of blessing, long dark brown hair, noting that Dürer's own hair was a lighter shade, and idealized features, he deliberately mirrors the image of Christ. The timing of the work, created in a year fraught with apocalyptic associations, underscores the painting's role as a profound declaration of Dürer's self-awareness and devout Christian faith. Dürer, always mindful of his public persona, frequently included self-representations in his artwork. This 1500 self-portrait was ultimately presented to the Nuremberg City Council by Dürer himself, where it remained on public display well into the early 19th century. Dürer's portrayal of the fall, depicting the pivotal moment in Christian lore when humanity's first duo, Adam and Eve, defied God by consuming the fruit from the tree of knowledge, stands out for its daring representation of humanity and nature. Crafted shortly after his return from Italy, this engraving reflects more on his fascination with the Renaissance and a homage to his homeland than on the Genesis narrative. The characters are modelled after classical statues, embodying the perfect human proportions and stances advocated by ancient Greco-Roman artists and architects. The dense foliage in the background echoes the German woodlands, familiar to the artist, thereby seamlessly integrating Italianate figures into his native setting. Adam is depicted holding a twig from which hangs a sign, declaring the artist's name as Albert Durer of Nuremberg, in Latin, boldly asserting his German identity. At the twig's end sits a parrot, whose calls were once interpreted as Ave Maria, making the bird a symbol for the Holy Virgin Mary, who, in Catholic doctrine, is seen as rectifying Eve's primordial transgression. Besides the serpent, which is directly identified with the devil in the scripture, each creature carries its own allegorical meaning. The rabbit, cat, and elk symbolize the four humours. Ancient Greek and Roman medicine believed in four unique bodily fluids influencing one's temperament and health, with any imbalance affecting both. In Dürer's Eden, the elk symbolizes black bile and melancholy. The ox stands for flame and a phlegmatic demeanour. The rabbit signifies blood and a sanguine nature, and the cat represents yellow bile, associated with a choleric temperament. Dürer's 1506 trip to Venice culminated in the production of the Feast of the Rosary, a significant large-format artwork. This painting depicts the Virgin Mary at the centre of a gathering of men and cherubs, receiving a rose wreath from two cherubs while she cradles the Christ child. To her right stands Saint Dominic, with figures believed to be Pope Julius and Emperor Maximilian kneeling in the forefront. The assembly around the throne is thought to consist largely of members from Venice's German community, including Dürer, who is portrayed holding a paper inscribed with Albrecht Dürer. The German completed this in 5 months, 1506. The Feast of the Rosary stands as a prominent testament to the cultural exchange between 16th century Venice and the art hubs of Northern Europe. It masterfully blends Northern European artistic traits, like intricate composition and background landscapes, with Venetian features, such as the Sacra Conversazione theme and musical angels, reminiscent of Giovanni Bellini's work, notably his San Zaccaria altarpiece, 1505. In this piece, Dürer notably used Venetian pigments, including a significant amount of lapis lazuli, a choice diverging from his typical use of azurite in his Nuremberg creations. This melding of northern and Italian artistic elements, merging Venetian vibrancy in colour and illumination with the Germanic tradition of religious altar pieces, exemplifies Dürer's ability to bridge the artistic practices of both regions. Commissioned by German merchants for the San Bartolomeo Church in Rialto, the incorporation of Venetian elements into this German-created piece not only showcases the patrons' allegiance to Venice, but also their national pride. Dürer's ambition to outshine his Venetian peers by embracing and elevating their artistic techniques and styles was a significant motivation. Despite being a celebrated artist back home, Dürer sought recognition in the Italian art scene. He expressed contentment with his achievement in a letter, stating that he had silenced all those painters who had said, "I was good at engraving, but at painting did not know how to handle colours." The Praying Hands by Albrecht Dürer is possibly one of the most widely recognized images globally, symbolizing devotion and Christianity across centuries. Through modern printing methods unforeseen by Dürer over 500 years ago, this drawing has found its way onto various mediums, including Bibles, T-shirts, and even Andy Warhol's tombstone. Crafted with ink and pencil on self-made blue paper, this artwork was initially conceived not as an independent piece, but as a preparatory sketch for an altar piece commissioned by Jacob Heller in 1507, which portrayed the Virgin Mary's coronation for a Frankfurt church. The depicted hands were meant to be those of an apostle, kneeling beside Mary's tomb. Despite the original altarpiece's destruction in a 1729 fire, a detailed replica survives in Vienna's Albertina Museum. This print stands as an early artistic exploration of melancholia or depression, significantly contributing to the myth of the suffering artist. Melancholia is one of three masterpieces known as the Master Engravings, created by Dürer in 1514. Alongside Saint Jerome in his study and Night, Death and the Devil. The piece features a winged female figure engrossed in thought, casually holding a compass, adored with a wreath and surrounded by various symbolic items. A foreign putto and a gaunt dog accompany her, while the bat bearing the title flies above. Erwin Panofsky, a renowned art historian, interpreted this piece as Dürer's spiritual self-portrait, mirroring the artist's personal battle with melancholia. During the Renaissance, melancholy was often associated with creative brilliance. Dürer's inclusion of numerous elements in this engraving is seen as a representation of his artistic mindset. The neglected tools scattered around signify geometry, a discipline crucial to Dürer as an artist, and symbolize the unfulfilled potential. An hourglass, symbolizing life's fleeting nature, a ladder leading nowhere, and empty scales, all convey feelings of lethargy and lack of direction. The polyhedron adds a layer of complexity, challenging the Renaissance emphasis on linear perspective. Both the central figure of melancholia and the putto possess wings yet remain earthbound, burdened by their heavy thoughts. The noticeably thin dog appears too frail to stand. The artwork communicates a sense of overwhelming defeat and inertia amidst disorder and desolation. Despite the themes of artistic frustration it depicts, the engraving's meticulous execution underscores Dürer's status as a premier engraver of his era. Since its initial release in 1515, Dürer's Rhinoceros has remained among his most celebrated works. This woodcut illustrates the artist's rendition of an Indian rhinoceros, shown in profile standing on a small mound of earth. The artwork's date and Dürer's distinctive monogram are positioned above the rhino's head on the right side. An accompanying inscription provides a detailed description, noting its arrival in Lisbon for King Emmanuel of Portugal from India in 1515. The text describes the rhinoceros as having the colour of a speckled tortoise covered in thick scales, comparable in size to an elephant but shorter in stature and nearly impervious. It mentions the animal's sharp horn, used against its purported enemy, the elephant, depicting a vivid scene of attack. The narrative also highlights the rhino's speed, agility, and intelligence. The rhinoceros featured in Durer's work was a diplomatic gift from Sultan Muzaffar of Gujarat to the Portuguese governor in India, who then sent it to King Manuel of Lisbon, and eventually it was intended for Pope Leo in Rome. However, en route to Rome, after being displayed in Marseille to King Francis of France, the animal tragically drowned when its ship succumbed to a storm. Durer created this piece without ever having seen the rhinoceros, relying solely on second-hand descriptions. Thus, the animal is depicted with armour-like thick plates and a texture of circular marks, along with an imaginative second horn on its back and reptilian legs, diverging from a true rhinocerosid appearance. As the first living rhinoceros in Europe since the 3rd century AD, its arrival ignited immense curiosity and interest. Durer's choice of woodcut for this depiction facilitated widespread and efficient reproduction of the image. Following the original 1515 print, 8 more editions were produced over the next 3 centuries, with some versions containing additional text. The iconic image found its way into scientific publications and inspired other artistic creations, including architectural and sculptural works from the Renaissance to the 20th century, illustrating its lasting impact on European art and culture.